Morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Going to call the meeting to order and start with our legal notice. As information for our audience, if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Board of Fair Commissioners today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. Mr. Parton, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Good. Excellent, good. Thanks so much to the team for working on our audio issues over the past month and fixing it for us. Okay, first up, we're gonna look at our minutes. Let me know if there is a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, next up, we have public comment time. Is anyone wanting to speak today? Okay, great, then we will close public comment time and move on to financial report with Satrice.
Good morning, everyone. The financial information presented today is preliminary, and all revenue and expenses for July 2021 may not have been recorded to the ledgers as of August 9th, 2021, when this report was created. The preliminary actuals through July 2021 are as follows. Revenue is $50,026. Expenditures are around $141,700, resulting in a net loss of approximately $91,683. Depreciation expense is $0. So the total net loss is roughly $91,683. Below you will find an itemized list of our expenditures. Our top three expenses are payroll, purchase services, and insurance/low-cap. Payroll expense is approximately $110,838, which represents 78% of our total expenses. Purchase services expense is $8,662, which is 6%. Insurance, permits, and low-cap expense is $13,786, which is 10% of our total expenses. For the month of August, our revenue projection is approximately $69,890. We will host an outdoor-only flea market along with various events listed on the August 2021 calendar. I would like to inform the board that we have been awarded $663,292 of CDBG funding for allowable costs related to the emergency shelter held at the Fairgrounds. However, we must wait for Metro Council to approve the funds before we can accept them. This includes the financial report. Are there any questions?
Does the 600,000, will that be in last year's budget or is it coming up year? So through July 20, so just starting July 21? Okay, got it.
Any other questions for Satrice? Thank you so much, Satrice. We will move on to Executive Director's report.
we go. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Happy first day of school. The brief update that I have is just to talk about repairs and warranty work that are still ongoing in these buildings. Skanska has been very, very responsive in assisting in getting those warranty repairs completed. You may remember that a lot of that work was delayed during the pandemic, and so we're very close to getting a lot of that wrapped up. The biggest project that is left is some sewer line work in Expo 1 coming out of the restrooms. We're just going to be realigning some pipes in there that will help with eliminating the potential for backups. So that'll be very helpful, and that work is slated to be completed by September 8th, plenty of time before the September market, which we are anticipating having indoor markets in September. You'll see in front of you, we certainly wanted to social distance everyone this morning, but our new tables are here in front of you, and then we also got our new pipe and drape in, which we have gotten rid of all of our lovely ivory, gold, and blue, and have transitioned to black. We got to do a couple setups for this weekend, and it just was really professional and very clean looking, and I think our event promoters were very pleased with the quality of the setup. So it was a very busy weekend. We had 4 events. I'm sure Mr. Wallace will kind of get into those a little bit and tell you how those went, but I'm very proud of everybody's effort because it's been a long time since we've been that busy, and, you know, try to get some of the rust shaken off before we dive into fully reopening in September. So I want to thank staff for their incredible work over the weekend. It was very, very busy.
Any questions for Laura? All right, great. Then, Mr. Weaver, you walked in just in the nick of time for old business, Bristol Motor Speedway update. Nope.
Nope. How about that? Good morning, James Weaver, Waller, Lanston, here this morning for Bristol Motorsports. Appreciate the opportunity. The client appreciates the opportunity to present to the board. I'll be brief. Since our last meeting, we've progressed with our discussions with the Metropolitan Government. We've had several meetings with the representatives of the Finance Department with regard to the financing models that might be utilized for track renovation, and we have a meeting later this week with regard to construction delivery models. We hope to have something to present to the board very soon. You may have seen in the media, we extended the letter of intent through August 30th with the acquiescence and the agreement of the mayor's office. We hope to meet with your negotiating team, your chair and your executive director. We hope this week. I know there's an invitation floating around about a meeting later this week with those folks. We hope to get that scheduled to sort of catch them up on where we are with Metro. We are in our final stages of getting signed agreements with our potential community benefits partners that we will be presenting to the board later on as part of our overall package. We've had several meetings with those partners, and again, as soon as we get signed agreements, and we look forward to presenting those folks to you guys, and to the community at large.
What kind of partners?
Community benefit. We can, while this month was not a big month in terms of community neighborhood association meetings, because we're sort of in this lull between our first set of 25 meetings with our community, with the neighborhoods that surround the track, and waiting to get some information to provide them about where we think the agreements are going to end up in terms of Metro. We have had meetings with both with Fall Hamilton and with the higher ed institutions of higher education that are in this part of the city, and those meetings have gone really well. Pursuant to what we wanted to do, and also encouragement from the Fair Board, we have not yet met with Market Street. We have a meeting scheduled with Market Street. They've been very busy, obviously, with the work that they've been doing. We've been busy. We have talked several times on the telephone with Market Street. That face-to-face meeting will happen. It's actually, I believe, scheduled for later this week. And finally, to report on a request that the board made at the last meeting, we reached out to Stand Up Nashville, offered to meet. I would add as a parenthetical that the very first community meeting that we scheduled months and months and months ago was with Stand Up Nashville. Obviously, they have a relationship with MLS and with mixed use, and understanding that relationship and making sure that we certainly don't do anything that makes that relationship more difficult is very, very high on our priority list. We scheduled that meeting early on. It got canceled by Stand Up. For whatever reason, they didn't reschedule it. After the last meeting, I reached out to Stand Up as requested by the board. I'm a fairly easy person to get in touch with. I got 3 email addresses. We've not heard anything from them. We stand ready to meet with them if they want to meet. Bristol reached out directly to Stand Up after our last meeting. We still haven't heard from them. But I didn't want the board to think that we were not, that we didn't hear you at the last meeting, Commissioner. We did, and did as you asked. And with that, that's my report, Madam Chair. Sorry I'm having trouble with this microphone. You've got to get really close.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. So just so the board knows, a lot of that was an update for me as well. I've not heard much since the last meeting. I have a question about the letter of intent. Was that released, the letter of intent moving to August 30th?
We just verbally.
I'm sorry?
It was it shows it's verbal. It's not.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay.
It's a letter of intent. I mean, the lawyers, as Mr. Cross likes to say, letters of intent are just barely worth the paper they're written on. They express the intent of the parties to continue. We verbally agreed we're going to keep working. I think I said as much to the board at the last meeting. I know I said as much to the media after the meeting that, you know, our client will continue to work with Metro and with the negotiating team for the Fair Board until we work something out or don't work something out.
Gotcha. So a verbal moving of the goalpost essentially is what you're...
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Any questions from the board? Yeah.
Mr. Weaver, just maybe a little bit of a request, because I continue to have maybe several, close to a dozen outstanding requests for information. But one in particular that I thought would be pretty easy is Mr. Wrightson had promised sound mapping data for a broader area from his study 8 weeks ago, and he said it was readily available. You know, I'd love to get all my questions answered, but I just wanted to highlight that. I'd really appreciate it if we could get that broader data and information that we were promised existed. So just wanted to make a note on that.
Yes, sir.
Other questions from the board? Okay, great. Then we will move on to community impact speedway policy discussion and consideration. Commissioner Bergeron?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
just appreciate that this continues to be a standing item and would welcome any discussion the board would like to engage in. Just had 2 items I wanted to raise this month. The first one is I wanted to go back to some of the discussions around sound that we've had the last couple meetings. I've seen since the last meeting the mailers that have blanketed outer counties, Williamson County and then parts of Davidson County and abroad, making a lot of proclamations. One mailer I saw said, and I'm quoting, I think exactly here, a new study proves Bristol Motor Speedway's improvements will cut racing noise at the Fairgrounds track by nearly 50%. So I wanted to just highlight that that's the message being given. Now, respectfully, that doesn't match up with what we heard exactly. That I think that the prom 50% stat was about local racing, not the other types of racing. But putting that inaccuracy aside, I wanted to go back to sound monitoring again and just hope to have some discussion or some consensus among the board that, if Bristol believes that they have proven that they will cut sound noise by 50% or otherwise, then certainly they should have no problem agreeing to a regular a robust sound monitoring program and being accountable if they don't meet those promises. And at the moment, I'm not hearing that Bristol is willing to do that. And so, this is one of those things where I think if the board stands together on something that seems pretty darn reasonable and talks about what a good sound monitoring program would be and being accountable for promises that are being blanketed with tens of thousands of dollars of money behind them, then it seems like that should only make sense. So if any board members would like to discuss, what monitoring might look like and what that could be, I would welcome that discussion.
So after my conversation and presentation at the last meeting, one of the things that I believe I stipulated during that was the importance of monitoring the ongoing sound. And so my question would be, is that part of your talking points when you guys go speak with them this week insofar as operational issues?
We have, and that is, after the last board meeting, we did, Jerry and I had a brief conversation about sound monitoring and continuing that discussion and formulating those approaches to how that's done, how that's reported, and contemplating any adjustments that could happen if the results aren't achieved as the study indicated.
I just want to add one more thing. We need to, when we're having that conversation, get them, and I can't imagine that they won't agree to this, is if further sound mitigation is required, that there would be some stipulation as to the time frame in which that would be set up. And what the criteria would be for triggering further mitigation. So we need to have some benchmarks in place insofar as raw intensity data. And we don't want to live by perception data. And there's a big difference, as I had shared, between your perception of intensity and what that actual reading measures, because they're two different sets of numbers.
I think it would be definitely helpful to get that kind of drill down. I think, like we talked about last meeting, Commissioner Wiener, there's been this long running tradition here that whenever something's, and I appreciated that follow-up information you provided to the commission, there's always that trigger where when it's particularly loud, when maybe some cars aren't running with mufflers in the past, the answer is, oh, well, it's cloudy. Oh, well, it's sunny. And I want to account for that, but at the same time, Bristol's making some pretty concrete promises, and they're blanketing that all over town. And so that even sort of supersedes that. If they can't meet their promises, there's just got to be some accountability. So I appreciate your assistance with trying to drill down on how to get a metric that's fair, but also that if they're going to make that promise, they need to live by. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd like to add that we have not, because of where we are in negotiations, really, which is where they are with the city in terms of financial negotiations, we have not drilled down on any of this. You will be included in all of this. We're not keeping you out of information.
No.
Just so you, I similarly have environmental concerns about how we're monitoring environmental impact as well. So that's something that we're exploring, and the financial liability of both of those, to making sure that the city is not strapped with rectifying either situation. So those are all concerns for me, just so you know.
So, thank you for highlighting the environmental. Obviously, we have so many questions and concerns. It's like things sort of fall by the wayside because it's big and bigger. I mean, environmental, gosh, I worry about Browns Creek. I worry about flooding and what happens when you raise the track and what that does to surrounding areas, including the Expo Center. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a long running list of, of things we've not been able to address yet, so. Any other? I
did have one other item that I just wanted to highlight, and it's the impact, the community impact of that sort of, that mystery box, which is the 20-ish Convention or Visitor Bureau events that are supposed to produce $1 million revenue, and we don't know how many corporate events that Bristol is planning but won't, talk about. All I really have there is Marcus Smith gave an interview comparing the Speedway to Las Vegas and said that, 2 weeks a year they have races, and then the other 50 weeks a year they have lots of events, I think was what he said in an interview several months ago. And that, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means 50 corporate events Bristol is planning. I don't know if they're planning 100, but that remains sort of the mystery box, which has enormous impact concerns. As we saw this morning, first day of school, folks had a little bit of trouble getting in here. What plans does Bristol have, and what guardrails are going to be in place for all these events, to ensure that there's not just a whole new universe of noise and disruption to the area. And I guess one request I had was hope for is, can we get Butch Spirit in here? I've been asking for about 4 months about what CVB's involvement is and what planning, and I know Director Womack has been working on getting that information, but can he just stand up here and assure us that, they've thought through what, just looking for some assurance that what they're planning isn't, at least from the CVB perspectives, isn't 20 additional loud racing dates to make $1 million. And then, also just the importance, and happy to discuss what kind of guardrails need to be in place as to prevent that whole slate of corporate events from being a whole other slate of loud racing or car noise.
We can certainly ask. We attempted early on to dig in on that, because it has such financial implications. Figuring out the financial structure of it has been key in having that conversation to then figure out what guardrails we can provide. So they're still in conversation, as I understand it. As soon as we have any more information, I think that invitation is needed, certainly.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion?
8 race weekends, 15 track rentals, 9 race weekends, 12 track rentals, 10 race weekends, 10 track rentals. Just reminding everybody again. Thanks.
Okay, great. We will move on then to Fairgrounds Improvement Project, Stadium Mixed Use and Infrastructure Update.
All right, is that much better? Even closer? There we go. Okay, sorry. It was a little bit of operator error. It was just actually off. So I'll take blame for that one. Well, first, good morning, board, council, staff. Appreciate you this morning back in person. I will say that I made it in this morning just fine. There was a nice line for the school, but definitely navigated the site well. So I think that construction staff, with all the work and effort that's going on out there, have made at least a clear path and a conduit for people to get from the street to here this morning. Outside of the perimeter, I think there still may be some communication needed just to deal with some of the school traffic, but just wanted to highlight the teams that are out here on site working to make sure that we can navigate the site appropriately. I'll start this morning by giving the Fairgrounds improvement budget update. I'd like to start that update by giving the caveat that what will be reviewed on the dashboard is approximately 45 to 60 days in arrears of what's actually happened on site, as well as materials or equipment that's ordered. So this is reflective of costs that have been spent and recognized. I'll start off by saying that only about $70,000 of spend is recognized between last month and this month. So not an extremely heavy month from in terms of dollars flowing out of the allocated funds. But still, that brings the total spend for improvement projects to still over the $38.5 million, or about 94% of the allocated funding for improvements. While there was not a lot of spend recognized, a lot of discussion and activities did take place. Since our last board meeting, there have been some adjustments to line items, so I want to just give an overview of those this morning. I'll walk through those, so assuming that all commissioners have dashboards in front of them, but if you have questions or if I lose somebody during the way, please stop me, because I want to make sure I cover everything clearly. But I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I just want to call your attention to the section, probably the center of the page, where it has the demolition of existing structures. Just wanted to let all of the commissioners know that that area or that budget allocation was reduced. That work has been completed for several months. The closeout of the contract for our demolition contractor, that's fully been completed. And so with that scope of work being completed, it was a target area for reduction and reallocation for the purposes of other improvements. Highlighting what those are, the first one you'll notice is an increase to the construction in the expo section. Executive Director Womack highlighted those items in her executive director report, so I won't rehash those. But additionally, there was an increase of approximately it was an increase of $150,000 to the FF&E line item. Some of you who've been with us for a long time or just have a good memory, we squeezed the FF&E line item quite heavily early on in design and construction of this building, and looking at ways to make all of the things we knew we needed to get vertical completed. And so this is a great opportunity to reallocate those funds as appropriately as we had desired. And then, of course, costs related to what Laura mentioned in her executive director report, allocating a little bit more cost for the design team to monitor that work and project management dollars. The next section underneath the expo is the multi-purpose building. There was no adjustments to any line items there. We have pretty good allocation of dollars in that area. We did have 2 change orders that were executed. One was related to just the duration of time. We've had material cost increase. We've discussed that here previously. We're not immune to those types of challenges that are happening in our industry, in our market here. But we also had a change order for creating access for our construction team to work on the site. The grand total of those change orders was only about $45,000, so not a significant increase by any means. Just wanted to keep the board abreast of those. I already mentioned the change to the demolition section. And then grandstands and speedway, you guys will see, is now expanded. That had previously been condensed or compressed on your previous dashboards. That's because there's a need to do some update work and repair work related to that speedway, and of course, some contemplation around making sure that the speedway functions, grandstands and the speedway function at a level so that that speedway can be successful. And so we've broken out an allocation of dollars to accommodate contemplated improvements as well as making room for some analysis and evaluations by the design team to look at that work. The last line item, or the last section, excuse me, is the repairs, demolition, and the previous site master planning. That was work done long ago on site. No change has been made there at all. And again, that leaves a percent complete of about 94%, and total remaining dollars allocated to $2.4 million, or $2,410,448 to be more exact. I'll pause in case there are questions related to Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Ed, for that update. Just a couple quick questions. The multi-purpose building line item on here, is that the official name for the maintenance building that's getting built?
The building and then the site, and
Site
essentially
prep.
the small campus created around the
Okay.
building. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. And then, second, I saw the story in the paper this morning about the DBE-related items as part of the stadium construction. And I remember us getting reporting for DBE-related items for the for this expo center. I know I'm guessing you're probably giving that to the Sports Authority, and if you are, it should be nice for our awareness if you could include that in our package as well.
I will take that and make sure that we get it, and Ron will make sure that I get it, and I'll make sure you get it.
Okay, thank you.
No, absolutely.
And good work on that as well. I guess my main questions, maybe it's more of a Ron question, but so we're getting to, let's take out the multi-purpose building, we're getting to, pretty late stages on a lot of the construction items. Are we just keeping any extras for phase 2 Fair Park, or how are they, what's the plan, how are they repurposed?
Yeah, well, I'll turn it over to Ron. Just want to say, if there aren't any other questions, the second page of your report shows Fair Park Phase 1. There was no change there, but there are about $219,000 that are still held for Phase 1's completion. And I'll pass the mic to Ron so he can address that. And really quick, Commissioner Hemmer, before I forget.
Sorry, speak up.
Really quick before I forget, the diversity participation for the expo building, we did a report. Those dollars will move slightly based on the work that'll happen here. So we'll give a revised report to the entire board, but just know that the dollars only move slightly because it's a small amount of work.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. To go ahead and address Phase 2 of Fair Park. Phase 2 of Fair Park is separately funded, and it has, it's technically a parks project, but we've been meeting with parks, we've met with water, et cetera, and it's going to be handled very much like the Phase 1 was handled. If you recall, when Phase 1 was done, the design for Phase 2 was essentially complete. And there was a stormwater variance developed as part of that process. That work has obviously been modified, or will need to be modified, because of the stadium and moving expo centers. All that was done before all of that was contemplated. So that work's underway. We're setting it up, but it's got a separate bucket of money, and that money should take care of itself for that. So the funds from this project won't go to Phase 2.
Okay.
Fair Park.
So the Phase 2 funding, it's been appropriated, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so is there any planning and, I guess, things happening with that, or are we just putting that on hold until we figure out the racetrack situation?
No, it's going to go independently of the racetrack. We're in the organizational phase of that right now. We had meetings last week with procurement to determine the process. So we're going to be working with the original design team to modify their drawings, because they're essentially complete, to adapt to some of the changes that, more sidewalks, that kind of stuff. So, but other than that, it's going to be a greenway and pretty much like it was originally envisioned back in 2016. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Henley or Mr. Gobble?
And I'll point out too, that the multipurpose building, you know, we're still in the ground up there. Anytime you're in the ground around the fairgrounds, you've got a lot of unknowns, so hopefully we'll be able to get that done in the next couple of months. And then we'll be able to come out and go vertical with that. It should come together quite quickly. The infrastructure project, you guys, which is the Sports Authority project, you can see all the work that's going on with that. It's quite extensive. We've got the bridge underway. We've got the road work underway, Benton Avenue being extended. I want to compliment Laura and her staff for working well with all the various contractors. We have coordination meetings every week about fairgrounds events and all the challenges that has. And then mixed use is in the process of beginning to start doing their erosion control and beginning to get their projects teed up and coordinating with all the other contractors around. So that's kind of an overview. Do I have any more questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Mary. Did you want to? Awesome.
Good morning. I'll give you a brief update on the stadium. I'm sure as folks drove in today, you're able to see some of the progress. We're about finished with the canopy, which is the deck that surrounds the stadium. That is targeted to be finished by the end of the month. And after that point in time, the big, large cranes will be removed from the site. They've just about finished the upper precast bowls. And then the work will focus on clearing the middle of the pitch or the field to get ready for the installation of the natural turf, which should happen later this fall. We're on track and on schedule. And the only other piece that I'll share is not only has Mortensen Messer and CAA Icon been busy here at the stadium, but they've also been busy out in the neighborhoods. And during the past year, they went to Napier Elementary and cleaned up the playground, installed some got a soccer field out there and a few other things at the request of the principal. And about 10 days ago, we had a dedication. I'm sorry, I was late today. I was over at Napier on the first day of school welcoming kids back. And so we'll be looking at Fall Hamilton next to see what we can do there, but it's really important for us to be involved in the neighborhoods that we are as well. Sweet. And with that, are there any questions that I could answer?
Any questions for Mary? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Dirk, did you want to?
Good morning, Commissioners. My remarks will be brief, but I appreciate the opportunity to share our newest plans with you last month. Since then, we've made some progress. We received our final site plan approval from the Planning Commission 2 weeks ago Thursday, and we're in the process of trying to pull our grading permit for the site. So what you'll see happening on the site over the next few weeks, as Ron mentioned, will be the installation of erosion and sediment control measures, very similar to what you see civil constructor put in along the infrastructure. And then we're also going to be doing some core drilling to try to find out what's under the ground, which will allow us to finish our foundation design for the project, although that foundation work probably won't begin in earnest until roughly the end of the year. So we're continuing to plug along and appreciate the support.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will move on now to divisional fair update. Laura?
We continue to just work administratively on plans, making sure that, job descriptions are written and accurately reflect duties that we anticipate. So it's a lot of just administrative and behind the scenes so far, but there's obviously a sense of urgency, but we're working through some of those things now, so.
Any questions about that? All right, then we will move on to event update. Mr. Wallace?
While Scott comes up, I just want to reiterate my thanks to the staff for all their work this weekend. It's been a long time since we did 4 events, and As you can see, as you came into the campus, there's a lot of construction and some detours, and it can be stressful, but we're working together every single week to make adjustments and communicate with our customers and our promoters, and staff really has done a fantastic job with that.
I want to echo what Laura just said. We definitely had to have some challenges with this. We've worked through it. I'm amazed by such a short staff being able to come together, especially I want to highlight Bobby Burns, who's the manager of our parking, and not just this past weekend, which I'll get into, but the weekend of the race that we had in July, the SRX race. 12,000 people at least were on this campus at one time, and I was here and I don't have no idea how we parked that many people here. So commending them, and our staff came together. Some people from other staffs, from David's staff and Mary Ann's staff and my staff were here to make sure those things came together, because that's what we're about, and we want to make sure that we make this place look good. And it was a great weekend. Scott Millen is here. He may want to come up and talk about that. But, and then this past weekend, we had Porter Flea outside in the sheds. We had in this building the drum show, and also we had a home show in Expo 3. And I've talked to all three promoters, and they were concerned about parking. But again, Bobby Burns' staff did a yeoman's job in making those things happen. So one of the things that we need to kind of shore up on, and I would like to shore up on, is the future events and the future of what parking looks like. We had Thrillville, which is going to do that carnival in September here yesterday, and we were talking, we got them together with some of the staff from Bell and others that allowed them to understand what's going on and what's going to happen. What the campus looks like today won't look like this in September. And then I have events in October that the campus is not going to look like it is in September. So it's just trying to figure out, and they allowed them to understand how fluid it is when you talk about construction and how many changes have to happen. So we're working through that. I think that, and I've said this before about this staff and about how I look at things, we love challenges, and we love to seek those challenges and look through those challenges and not look at it as a challenge, but as an opportunity for us to get better. So we would like to, have a lot more information, but sometimes it's not available, but that's what is going on. This month, as we go through this month, we have a few events going on. We shouldn't have many challenges with parking with those events, but starting in October, it's going to be full blast with events with these buildings filled. We don't have Expo 1 available, but we'll have it by October. And that first week in October, we have the Exotic Pet Show and some other events that bring a lot of people to the facility. And at the same time, one of our parking lots is the racetrack. And so we have to remember that when a race is going on, we got to remember how many people can we get on this facility. And Laura and I both work with parks to at least, if we can get to get Greer Stadium. Having Greer Stadium means that we have to have shuttles going there back and forth. So, and also we work with Fall Hamilton for parking as well. And the SRX race I want to mention as well. If the race was the next day, if you can remember how hard it rained, we would have been in trouble because we had people parked in the back on the park. And then if it was the day before, that rain came the day before, we'd be in trouble. So we have to really look at the weather, look at everything like that to make sure that we have enough parking. So, but again, we love challenges, and we love to be able to get through those challenges and look at them as opportunities. And we appreciate everyone's cooperation in this, and especially cooperation with the racetrack, cooperation with the soccer folks, cooperation with the people that's doing the street. We appreciate that because it's very important, and the promoters are even in February asking me questions about that because they have to start having people understand that as well. Different ways of getting in and out and all that good stuff. So we appreciate all that, but we need to make sure that we shore it up even more to make sure that we have information to the promoters for that. Any questions for me?
I just appreciate the flexibility so much with all the staff, and thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Laura, did you want to add anything? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wall. We'll move on to new business, aging report, accounting write-off authorization.
In your packets, you will see an aging report. We wanted to take this opportunity to just remind you of a procedure that, or a policy that we presented and was approved by the board. I believe it was back in 2018, but what it does is it allows us to administratively write off any essentially bad debt. It could be caused from several factors, maybe insufficient funds, return check, sometimes we have that, or just if there is a payment, say, due after an event and that revenue is not received. What this does, and that procedure does, is allow us to write it off on the accounting system, but does not remove our ability to go out and still collect the funds, because there is certainly procedures with collection agencies and such, and our own efforts to reach out to people who do owe us money. So that's just a reminder on that. The aging report that you have, this is another report that is produced and we communicate with Metro Finance on, and this is it looks like late payments in this situation. However, there are some timing considerations that go into it. Many of these payments here listed on this report are weekly events, but are paid on a monthly basis. So you may see one over 30 days, and it could be a timing issue, or it could be a late payment. So this is another thing that in our policy, our accounting policies internally, that we had agreed to share with you routinely, so that, you know, that's very transparent and you can see those efforts to receive payment and account for those. So if there's any questions, I don't know if Satrice has anything to add, but I want to thank her. She's just done a fantastic job coming up to speed now that we're back in the office, because I'll remind you that we were working remotely when Satrice first started. And so, you know, coming back, she's had a lot to learn, and she is dove in, you know, head first to understand how we do things, and has made significant improvements since she's been here. So I want to thank her as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Laura, and Satrice. Reminded me to ask about the Formosa lawsuit and the accounting that the past debt we owed by him. Is I guess with Alex out, you may not know, but Laura, you can give us an update if that's still ongoing. I'm guessing we wrote off that bad debt as well.
So my understanding is that it is pending. I mean, I don't know if Mr. Cross has an update, but another attorney in Metro Legal is working on that, but the case is, in my understanding, is still ongoing and pending at this time, I guess.
That's correct. The Wheels of Justice Chancellor. The litigation is ongoing.
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about what the collection activities look like before you make the decision to write something off?
Did you hear that question, Satrice?
Can you repeat it, please?
Of what activities or what procedures we follow to try to collect the debt before it goes to collections?
According to our policy, our current policy, attempt to collect from our dealers or our promoters, but then after 45 days, if we have not been able to collect, then I can make the decision to determine that the accounts are uncollectible and write them off. So after 45 days of uncollected revenue and after many attempts to try to collect, then we decide whether or not they're uncollectible.
Okay, so that leads me to another question. Do we have repeat offenders, for lack of a better word, people that continue to show up and maybe it gets past the 45 days and we eventually collect, only for them to show up on the aging list again?
I guess I can answer that. No, not generally, because we do have procedures in place. You know, if, for example, it does involve, say, flea market vendors, Mary Ann has procedures in place that if there's uncollected booth rent, that we won't rent again if we didn't get a previous payment. Some of the internal processes that we have implemented since we've been back have been very helpful, and one of those is, for the flea market specifically, is we designate 1 week where people can rent their booth and pay for them. So we have a start date and an end date. So if their booth is not paid for by that end date, they don't get one. So there's no floating to say, oh, I'll pay it when I get there, or I'll pay it, you know, after I leave for the weekend. We've eliminated that. And so that helps a lot. And I think we're gonna see less activity on that for payments. But also, we're encouraging on our credit card payments or debit card payments in lieu of checks and cash, trying to get more to those types of payments versus office payments the weekend of.
Okay, and my last question, do we have a sense of why these are recurrent for the same group that continue to be in arrears? It looks like there are multiple entries for your parking vendor.
Well, Bentkey, we've actually received some payments from Bentkey. We just didn't receive it in time for them to come off of this particular report.
I can't hear her.
Bentkey, here, that's listed, Bentkey, can you hear me? We have received $900 in
So
payments
distorted down here.
from them. However, when this report was created, it wasn't enough time to take them off. And as Laura mentioned earlier, because they're on a week-to-week event schedule, but we require them to pay monthly, they're showing up here, but we are in communication with them to change their payment process. They have been sending checks. So we are in conversation with them to try to do an ACH, because I think we've had some issues with checks being lost and mishandled and things like that. So we want to eliminate that or minimize that as much as possible. So we try to change how they work with them and how they pay.
Okay, thank you.
Looking through some of the other items, can I get a little explanation on that $6,000 item related to SRX All-Star Tour, since that comprises over half of the amount here, total amount?
I defer to Scott.
That's one of those that we invoice them at the end of the month.
Okay.
And I think there's been some, I don't think that the people that are supposed to pay have been out because of illness, I think. And so I think that's what the issue is with that one. But they usually pay by the end of the month. So by the time this rolls around, it would have been gone. And that's what I'm assuming for that particular one.
Okay.
That's correct. So the difference there is not a license agreement. That is actually part of our contract with Track Enterprises. And so that is, again, just a little bit different payment timing. then an event license agreement where they have responsibilities to pay upfront.
And how our system is set up, I put the payment in, I put the amount in, and so once that date, that the day of the race shows up, that means that the next day they're gonna be 1 day late, instead of it being, that's how it shows up, and that's how we have to invoice, and thanks to the Lord, we have a non-antiquated system coming in that will reflect things like that, and we'll be able to do that so you guys can understand a little bit better. So that's the only way that we can do it with this system, but not necessarily are those on that list technically late. Satrice mentioned Bent Key. Bent Key did send a check, and I believe they did. They have no reason to not tell me the truth, but we didn't get that check. Well, I got their check for July, Friday, put that in. The HCH would now allow them to pay on time now, instead of us waiting for a check to come in. So we're working through this. It's gonna take a little while to get people aware of that. And now we're going to invoice prior to. So then we don't have to invoice on that date of the 30th or 31st and wait, for them to send a check. So even though they may have an event or whatever on August the 20th, we make sure that if it's on the books, we're gonna invoice them now, so they understand that when that time comes, even if on that monthly, we need to have that payment in. So we're changing some policies now with that too.
I'll also mention that the new vendor and event management system that we're implementing will allow for online payments, and that is something that we haven't had the ability to do because of our antiquated system right now. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for our customers and our vendors to pay online, but our push is to go as cashless as possible. We do have the ability to go cashless on parking, but it's really going to depend on how fast we can process those using essentially a square, whether or not that is worth doing the cashless option for parking versus cash, since so many people know that, we've always only accepted cash for parking. So we'll have to evaluate that, but we will have the ability to do that with the new vendor management system.
Any other questions? Okay, great. And we will move on to our last agenda item, campus safety and security discussion. I wanted to add this agenda item today for two reasons. One is the more obvious one, that we're all masked again, and that there is a mandate for metro buildings for people to be masked. And so I wanted to have that conversation, especially as we're about to embark on indoor events again and we're having this surge. So I wanted to bring that up to the board. And the other part of this discussion that I wanted to prompt, and there's no necessarily action to be taken today, but watching social media a couple Saturdays ago when the storm hit Nissan Stadium, it just made me think we got a lot going on our campus, and we got a lot of stakeholders and potentially more coming in. And with that being said, I just want to make sure that we're having discussions about evacuation policies, and that I know we have some set already in this building, and that, just assessing those current evacuation policies and just working with stakeholders to make sure that we have, for lack of a better term, a correct phone tree of information is getting disseminated, and also that we factor that in any negotiations that we're having with potential future stakeholders. So that being said, I just wanted to throw all that out there. If there's anything that anyone wants to discuss or ask questions about, I'll open it up.
Thank you, Chairwoman McNally. I was at the said concert at Nissan Stadium, and it was pretty eye-opening, I would say, just the chaoticness with everything. So I do think it'd be worthy of relooking at policies and training procedures. I know when, I'm not sure what all happens when we do events and working with security and Scott and whatnot with promoters, and just making sure we we have those policies tightened up. I think it probably affects us more in, you know, any outdoor events, racing, et cetera, you know, as we ramp up potential concerts, but, you know, even flea market, even though we are covered, but just, you know, I do think it's worthy of spending some time on and making sure we're tightened up, so to speak, on that.
Yeah, maybe, this is just riffing, but maybe there's some sort of quarterly meetings between stakeholders, just if there are updates to any policy. And especially, you know, you obviously, Dirk and Mary, you're developing your own policies, but just to learn more about what you're doing and just to be in you know, have some centrifugal force on that front would be really helpful. So we can follow up on that unless there are other ideas from the board.
It'd probably be worth just, I mean, I don't know what's happening today, so it'd probably be worth just starting out with what we do today, or, you know, what are our policies today, maybe circulating those, and training procedures, whatnot, you know, evacuation procedures, and then we can potentially bring in other stakeholders or, you know, other resources, external resources to help think through those,
Yeah.
you know, whether it be the fire department, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly, yeah, and I don't think it will be there won't be necessity for a quarterly meeting for long, once everything's sort of set in place, but as construction shifting and roadways are shifting, maybe it's good to have more constant check-ins. And then on the pandemic front, I just want to make sure that the staff knows that I'm here, and I think the board is here to support whatever you need. I don't know if you're in contact with the health department, if they've reached out about events. I know we were working hand in hand with them last year when the numbers were surging. So as we're looking at opening indoors in September, I just want to make sure that we're having those conversations and that we're here if you need us.
Metro has been very proactive in department head meetings and providing assistance through the health department for guidance, for signage that you see. So the answer is yes. We do have a direct contact. Dr. Gil Wright, who was with the health department during, you know, our shutdown and such, is the health director, and he is extremely responsive and making sure that Metro and all the departments are updated on the latest guidelines from CDC. And then Metro HR has been very responsive and helpful as we navigate potential exposures in the employee portion of our pandemic response, as well as OSHA guidance for masks and safety as we work here at the Fairgrounds. So both of those agencies, along with the mayor's office, have been very helpful.
Director Womack, do you feel like, just with presuming the mask mandate and in the facility continues for a little bit, do you and staff feel like you have the support you need on sort of security muscle for sort of obstinate event attendees who are brain dead and don't see the importance of complying with a mask mandate like that? I mean, do you guys feel like you have the support you need, or do you need something from us or help from us to try to ensure you guys have that support you need?
I do. I think we haven't had direct conversations with health or I guess Metro PD in that regard, but certainly if there was a disruption caused at an event because of refusal to comply, I would feel very confident that we would have ample support by both to address the situation. Plus our staff, you know, we've done this for quite some time now in various stages of mandates, and staff has certainly we've talked about conflict resolution techniques and things that we can do and say to people to, you know, educate them and ask them to comply, and that's been very successful for us. But yeah, if there was a disturbance caused by it, I do feel that we would have a lot of support, and plus our skill internally at trying to diffuse that situation. I think we could handle that.
Anything else? Okay, great. We have come to the end of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
See you next month.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.